Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison, and I want to welcome you to this special 11-day program, 11 days of global unity that Humanity Rising and Ubiquity University and We the World, and 11 days of global unity and the Sign Network and Unity Week and scores of other organizations and networks are coming together to co-produce during these 11 days between the 11th of September, 9/11, and the 21st of September, the International Day of Peace. Over the weekend on Saturday, we commemorated the 20th anniversary of the events on 9/11/2001, the bombing of the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, etc., that really changed our world. The reverberations of which are still with us as we witness the final days of the US forces in Afghanistan. 20 years they were in Afghanistan and left as they did in Vietnam, as they did in Iraq, in defeat, and the world in consternation at the falling of a great imperial power. Each day during these 11 days, we're taking up a theme. Today will be on the theme of the environment. So I wanted to just accentuate the one aspect of our world environment that we are all having to take in, that we are now in a climate shift of state. You'll probably remember the information that scientists first started warning governments about climate change in the 1960s. It was actually President Johnson who received the first report saying that the climate was beginning to change due to human industrial activity around the world that was spewing into the environment large amounts of CO2. That report was ignored. There was another report by MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and the Club of Rome in the 1970s, predicting that if the governments did not make a concerted effort around reducing CO2 emissions, that by the end of the first quarter of the 21st century, particularly by the middle of the 21st century, we were going to have catastrophic events emanating out of the environment. And as we all know, the governments have done essentially nothing since the 1960s. And now we're in a state of climate change that is now creating an escalating crescendo of ecological turbulence. And that's why the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change just this last month has said that we are now in unprecedented territory. The Secretary General says that this means code red for humanity. And I'd like to just use as an example of what code red actually means from our own pandemic. We have been dealing with COVID, all of us, wherever we are in the world. One of the consequences of climate change is epidemics. As we destroy the biodiversity and the environment, viruses that have been embedded in the permafrost, for example, in Siberia or the Arctic, start to come out because the permafrost is thawing. And there's estimates from scientists that there's upwards of 850,000 viruses like COVID that are just like out there. We're experiencing one. And we thought that we could deal with it, like we've dealt with, other viruses. And all of a sudden we realized that we could not. And on March 11th of 2020, the World Health Organization said, we are now in a global pandemic. And again, we thought, well, we will deal with it. we can handle this. And by summer, we're going to be traveling again. And then came a second wave. And then all of a sudden, last fall, variants started to pop up. And then we went into the winter, and we thought, surely by spring of 2021, we're going to be done with this. And we weren't. And then we went through the summer, and we're now experiencing not only the fourth and now fifth waves of COVID, but the variants, particularly this new Mu variant, is demonstrating that it is impervious even to vaccines. So we all need to take in that pandemics are probably now part of the normal for humanity, because our environment has become so broken. We've destroyed, according to the World Wildlife Fund, 69% of all the biodiversity on the planet in the last 50 years. So it's so broken that we can no longer be sustainable. And our environment is now shifting state and escalating in turbulence in a way that is going to challenge our governments with increasingly ferocious force to maintain any kind of stability. And so how we as individuals, how we as a movement, how we as environmentalists deal now with an environment that is spinning out of control, in the face of which our governments can no longer maintain a continuity of stability, is now the environmental issue of our time. And it's a tough reality to take in. But Code Red is now our world. Perpetual pandemics are now our world, leaving us as environmentalists on this third of the 11 days of global unity, really with the singular mission, probably the only mission left for humanity. And that is, how do we regenerate the larger ecosystem? And there's much that we can say about this, which we will be noting about the Global Regeneration Corps and activities that people are doing around the world. But we all, as we live our lives right now, need to know that our environment has become so broken that only proactive remedial action around regeneration will suffice to not only restore the ecosystem, but ensure that humanity can both survive and thrive the escalating turbulence, which is now inevitable and is no longer avoidable. That's what Code Red means. So welcome to our program, and let us just take a moment now, as somber as it is, to center ourselves. Let us just center ourselves in our bodies. Let us take a deep breath. Let us close our eyes and let us remember who we most essentially are. We are breath-breathing, heart-beating beings. Let us, in a spirit of deep gratitude and thanksgiving, despite the challenges, let us be grateful that we're alive at this most extraordinary moment of the human journey, when everything we have built is now being called into account. Thank you, everyone. Now, with an open heart and a heart full of gratitude and love for each and every one of you joining our program today, I want to say once again how thrilled we are to be in this partnership during these crucial 11 days between the 11th and the 21st of September with We the World and 11 Days of Global Unity. And now I'd like to turn our program over to my good friend and colleague, Rick Olfig, who has been so instrumental in the creation of these organizations and in fashioning our 11-day program. Rick, good to see you on day 3. I turn the program over to you.
Okay, well, thank you, Jim. Thank you, Jim Garrison, so people get to know your name. And thank you, Rick Buckley, along with Ubiquity University and Humanity Rising, for broadcasting all of the 11 Days of Global Unity Summit panels and for offering master's degree scholarships in peace and tolerance, as well as regenerative action for 11 of our volunteers. And this is all being done in honor of our dear friend, Avon Madison, who, as you mentioned, we had this wonderful tribute to her that was on September 11th from Pathways to Peace. So thank you for offering these scholarships for 11 Days of Global Unity. I and we greatly appreciate your partnership and collaboration. So how about we start with that? Let's announce today's scholarship award. Jim, could you give an overview of the idea behind these scholarships and maybe talk about the whole concept of, I know there's a lot behind the concept of Ubiquity University and how you want to kind of broaden the spectrum of who is getting awarded these things.
Sure, thank you, Rick. And we're very proud to be partnering in this way so that each day we're providing a scholarship to either our master's program in regenerative action. We've come together with 40, 50 other organizations and academic institutions from literally all over the world to reinvent the MBA. But because we're no longer with business administration as usual, we're in code red. We've developed a master's in regenerative action that really empowers people to understand the importance and the capacities involved in regeneration. We also have another master's program in tolerance and peace studies that we're developing with the Global Council for Tolerance and Peace based in the Emirates. So we thought that this would be a good occasion as we launch the Global Regeneration Corps, as we build this coalition that is bringing you this program today, that we provide people out there who want to learn, who want to equip themselves in regenerative action or in tolerance and peace activity. I can't think of two more important aspects in our world to bring peace and climate together. And so our master's programs, we also have BA programs. So any of you who are interested in any of our programs in these domains, we actually have an honor system at Ubiquity. We have very low fees to begin with, but if you come into our programs and you can only pay 50% or you need even a full scholarship, we make that available to you because of the urgency of our time and the need to equip young people with the skills and the mindsets and the tool sets that they need to be effective change agents in our world. So Rick, why don't you announce today's recipient?
Okay, so thank you. And to start off, I want to mention our friend and collaborator, Joseph Akinola. He is our change agent in Lagos, Nigeria. And he's been involved with a lot of the conflict and unrest that's been going on there and dealing with that. So the award recipient today is actually his wife Goodness. And what a wonderful name for a person who's involved with peace and tolerance. So his wife, Goodness Akinola, is today's scholarship recipient. She is a mother of 3 children. She
Wow.
received a bachelor's degree in sociology and anthropology. And she is really, really tremendously grateful to be awarded this scholarship and this one is in the field of peace and tolerance.
Beautiful.
So, yes. So thank you. And so my name, as Jim said earlier, my name is Rick Ulfik, and I'm the founder of We the World and the We campaign at we.net. And I'm the co-creator of 11 Days of Global Unity with my dear friend, Troy Lush. You can find out about all of the 11 Days of Global Unity broadcasts and events by going to we.net. And we invite you to collaborate with us as a volunteer or an organization partner as well. Just go to we.net and everything is there. Today on our Day for the Environment, we are excited to bring to you our tribute to the changemakers working on We the World's campaign for the environment. And I'd like to start with my dear friend Sue Blythe, who is the coordinator for We the World's campaign for the environment. Sue Blythe is the coordinator, as I said, and founder of the Climate Collaboratory, which is doing so many different things. She'll probably talk about that as well. And the Climate Collaboratory is a pilot project of We the World and the University of Florida Extension's Sustainable Floridians program. So Sue, before you bring in the others who we're going to kind of give a tribute to today, what has motivated you to do this important work that you've been doing for so long?
Thank you, Rick. Well, gosh, I have to really start with my just love of moving around on different parts of this planet. As a child, my dad was an oil executive, can you believe? And in taking the family to different parts of the world, I just got to experience the human family in a way that most people don't. And so when I was in college and I saw the astronauts send back that first picture of the Earth from the moon, the little blue marble that they could cover up with their thumb, it just really changed me. And that's probably the moment when I became an advocate for the Earth. I just saw us as living on this very small, very fragile planet, and wanting to do what I could to take care of it. And as I grew and got married, had children, and I did what I could to help them grow up with a sense of responsibility for caring for the environment. But it was in 1985 that I really had the experience that put me on a path that I'm still on today. And that is, I was asked to study a statement from the Baha'i World Center in Haifa, Israel. And it was called The Promise of World Peace. And it was being presented to leaders of thought all over the world for the International Year of Peace in 1986. And so that's the very first time that I've had the experience of being part of a global movement. And it was very life-changing for me. And I'd like to share some of the words of this document that had such a profound influence on my life. And it was addressed to the peoples of the world. Great peace towards which people of goodwill throughout the centuries have inclined their hearts, of which seers and poets for countless generations have expressed their vision, and for which from age to age the sacred scriptures of mankind have constantly held the promise, is now at long last within the reach of the nations. For the first time in history, it is possible for everyone to view the entire planet with all its myriad diversified peoples in one perspective. World peace is not only possible, but inevitable. It is the next stage in the evolution of this planet. And that statement just hit me so profoundly that I thought, oh my gosh, I am part of the most important transformation in human history. And I felt like I have a role to play, and I wanted to know what I specifically could do to help with this process. And this is the part that really spoke to me. It says, world order can be founded only on an unshakable consciousness of the oneness of mankind, spiritual truth, which all the human sciences confirm. Anthropology, physiology, psychology recognize only one human species, albeit infinitely varied in the secondary aspects of life. Recognition of this truth requires abandonment of prejudice of every kind, race, class, color, creed, nation, sex, degree of material civilization, everything which enables people to consider themselves superior to others. Acceptance of the oneness of mankind is the first fundamental prerequisite for the reorganization and administration of the world as one country, the home of humankind. Universal acceptance of this spiritual principle is essential to any successful attempt to establish world peace. It should therefore be universally proclaimed, taught in schools, and constantly asserted in every nation as preparation for the organic change in the structure of society which it implies. There you go. That's what inspires me. And it led me on a path. I started when my daughters were young. They were, my oldest was, I think, 7 years old when we began this journey. And now I have 8 grandchildren who inspire me even further to work even harder to bring about this kind of education about the oneness of humanity that can change the world. And so it's my thrill and honor to be with Rick Elphick and We the World, and to work with some of the beautiful people that I've met. And I'd like to introduce 2 of my friends, Shannon Crossbear and Helen Warren, who have been on this journey with me. And so I want to ask you first, Shannon, if you could just tell us a little bit. I know that in our work, we've been talking about these prophecies that people have been looking forward to a time of peace on earth. And I wonder, from your tradition, can you tell us a little about what you learned about all that?
Sure. Chimigwacha Nikizhnaka Wavagonis Bojo Indue Maganak. I just wanted to greet you in the Ojibwe language. I'm here in the middle of the boreal forest. My English name is Shannon Crossbear. And thanks, Sue. I think, it's interesting because just this morning I was thinking about Code Red and about what Jim was talking about. And I was also thinking about, you know, the grandmothers and the mothers that are protecting life in all its forms, and how it's no, you know, it's not surprising to me. So, you know, in terms of tradition, it's always been our tradition to understand that we live with the earth, not on the earth. We live with the earth, and we have not been good relatives. And as our relative, as we look at what's happening to our relatives and happening to ourselves, this interdependence, this, you know, those things have been spoken for to me about since I was very young, and you know, and spoken out. I don't think many times they were necessarily heard, but the responsibility that we have, you know, in a kind of Western construct, we talk about rights a lot, but in our, you know, indigenous ways, we talk about responsibility. And we have a responsibility to be a good relative. And that's really what's led me to this. And my grandchildren and children, and I grew up knowing they spoke about a time that this time was going to come. But there was also the hope in that time of what they called the 7 generations. So that we would, after those 7 generations, we would start to remember that we were in a time of forgetting, and that we would remember that we belong to each other, and that we have a responsibility to, you know, to, like I said, be good relatives. And I, you know, this morning I was thinking about those women right now and their mothers and grandmothers, and they are standing the line to protect the water, our very sources of life. There are other peoples throughout these nations, throughout this world, that are doing the same. And they are the peacemakers. And they are the ones that we really, you know, need to support. And so in this theme for the environment, and how could I not participate? I have 13 grandchildren, and I love them. And I'm sorry for the world that they are dealing with. I'm sorry because I was not able to do enough to make it safe for them to drink the water and breathe the air and live with their relatives in a good way. And so now I'm calling upon everybody to remember so that those children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren will be able to do what I did this morning, which is look outside, go outside, breathe the air, walk to the water, you know, learn from their relatives, laugh at the birds that are doing silly things right now. And so that's why I'm here. And the connection, the other thing that we've done in this campaign that I think is really a call out is that we understand the power of the connection of the elders and the youth. And that the electricity that is born out through the experience and knowledge of the past with the energy of the present is really something that I think will reach that inevitable point that you spoke about, Sue. It is inevitable. I'd like to be around to continue to participate in it, you know, so thanks.
Thank you, Shannon. Oh my goodness. So as we learn to apply the principles of peace, not only to our fellow human beings, but to all living things and to the planet itself, we are excuse me, working on a pilot project, which Rick mentioned, that is with the University of Florida and We the World. And we're doing a program, we're calling it a community-wide climate conversation to action program. And we're doing the demonstration in Alachua County, Florida, where I live, and my friend Helen Warren has been kind of laying the groundwork for several years for some real powerful climate action. And Helen, I wonder if you could come in and tell a little bit about what you've been doing and how our city and county declared a climate emergency.
Yes, thank you, Sue. And Rick, the work that you're doing with We the World is just, it's fantastic. And I was introduced to that through Sue. And I think one of the most important things that we all find is that our strength is lifted as we meet others who are interested in this similar passion. A brief background, Sue, we have often talked about how did we get to this place that we care to this point that we're trying to work with the community to do more. And I grew up in St. Petersburg, Florida, south of here. I'm in Gainesville now. And so much of my life was on the edge of the Gulf of Mexico. And my parents were involved with various archaeological expeditions there, that the conversation about the people who came here before us was dealt with a great deal of respect. And then we also had family visits from people from all over the world, relatives, and my parents were involved with an American exchange service. So to see that the world was bigger than my house and my community at a young age was just part of a foundation. But some of the experiences that I've had as an adult have include that, the coursework that we do, all the sciences, and we study stuff but to stand on the side of a mountain on the Blue Ridge Parkway at Grandfather Mountain and to hold up a leaf that was just a skeleton of the leaf and look at the structure of the veins of that leaf, and then realize that as I'm holding it up, this tree that's behind me has that same formation in its twigs and branches away from the trunk of the tree. And then to look out over the valley that was before me and to see these creeks flowing into other creeks had that same branching pattern. And then I swear to God, however known, above the clouds were also the evaporation from those creeks. There was a pattern in the clouds that was the same. And that was just such a profound experience. And from that, it continues to grow to recognize that this earth is such a living thing that we haven't been able to express it in a lot of our modern coursework. And that's where I understood that when we dig down into the belly of the earth, we are causing so much great harm. It's not our job to decide when to take out the coal and the oil. They're there for a purpose. So with these backgrounds, I got real involved with several environmental groups, and eventually I ran for city commission here in Gainesville, Florida. And it's blessed to have a community here that is very much involved with the environment, doing it right. We've got the University of Florida here, and we want to do it right. As a representative with the Audubon Society, I made several trips up to Washington, D.C. to plead with our representatives there to get the policies in place. But too many of them were just not of that same understanding. And they'd say no, except for Bill Nelson. Senator Bill Nelson got it. And he's still he's still wonderful with his experience in space. Astronaut Bill Nelson. One of the last things that I got to do on the city commission, though, I was approached by a guy, Greg Undine, to make a proclamation that we were in a climate emergency. And as I was reading those materials, I'm like, oh no, people are going to think the sky is falling. This is a doom and gloom thing. But as I read more and more of it, it became convincing that what we do with this climate emergency is what we do when we see that there's a hurricane formation coming in towards us. We prepare for it. And what other opportunity do we have to prepare for it than to know that we have, okay, the projections are 50 years and 100 years, but we have 1 year, we have 1 day that we can make a difference. So I've really gotten involved with individuals that were making these, Zoom came upon us right after this proclamation was made. And we started Zooming our local adult senior groups, anyone that we could have that we could talk to. And that's where I met Sue Blythe. And she and I continued to talk about, how do we get this information out to the people? Because we need to have a tsunami wave of the grassroots. And I believe that we can do that through people of faith. And what Bill Moyers had done in the 90s with bringing together many leaders of the Dalai Lama was there. We had African American leaders. We had the religious leaders of pretty much every denomination, Native American leaders, Shannon, and they came together to talk about what is it that our doctrine tells us is our responsibility in taking care of this planet. And that documentary is Spirit and Nature. And since that time, I've just felt like, wouldn't it be great? And where could we do it? If we can't do it in Gainesville, I don't know where else would be a better place. So I've been reaching out to people in different churches, and we're aiming to do this in January around Martin Luther King's honoring his legacy, and to remind people that not only did he care about social justice here in the United States, but again, Sue introduced me to Martin Luther King's legacy with the World House. And if we're going to have peace in America, we need to have peace in the whole world. And if we can't create the type of community that comes together after a crisis, as we always see people saying, oh, I've lived next to this person for so many years, but I didn't know them until our houses fell down. We have to create that sense of community before the crisis. But we need to recognize we have signs of that crisis all around us. When our kids are killing each other, when we have people who don't have food, and we have islands that are flooding. So I have a passion, and I'm reaching out to people to say, let's do this together, because my generation, so many of the people who were the hippies said, like, we tried it and it didn't work. And what I learned too is that what we tried had been tried before us and before them. What this life journey is a relay. And we have to continue to pick up that baton and pass it to the next generation. But I want the next generation to know that I did not sit back on my ass and do nothing. And I apologize for that. I could have said I could. Anyway, my passion is there, and I love you all. I know we're going to do some great work together.
That was so wonderful.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
And Sue, I wanted to ask you, coming back to you, do you want to talk a bit more about the Climate Collaboratory, what led to that, and then more about that, because that's a whole thing, right?
It is a whole thing.
And it's an intergenerational concept too, which I think is very important.
Yes. So I have to go back to when my kids were little. And what I ended up doing at that point, I was a teacher staying home with to raise my 3 children. And I could sing. And so I took my little auto harp and I started singing songs of peace and harmony with the planet and harmony with all people. And creating little plays with my children and just activities that would light up a whole school with different expressions of peace. We decorated the 1,000 paper cranes for peace one Christmas that went on all the way to Sadako's monument in Hiroshima, Japan. So it was a peace effort that went all the way around the world and told me that doing this work has a mighty power to it. And so I dedicated myself to that. And all these years later, I came to a little it's a girl, animated character, a storybook character named Pacha, the dreamer. And As soon as I read that story, I said to the author, Dave Room, I want to make the sequel. I want to tell the story of how the humans helped to make this planet work for 100% of humanity and the community of life on Earth. And so we developed this program. Rick was there when we brought together the people, the author and the illustrator and animator of Pacha's Pajamas, and another educator who has a series of videos called Young Voices for the Planet. And my dear friend, Jennison Kip Cersei, who is at the University of Florida Extension, and she's the state coordinator of the Sustainable Floridians program. And what we agreed to do was establish the Climate Collaboratory as a way of taking that story and making it into a community-wide climate conversation to action program. And here we are 2 years later in the gardens of global unity where all things are possible, helping to initiate a but a project incubator where people can bring their good ideas for caring for the planet. And we can facilitate the development of those programs and find ways to work together with the beautiful networks, the global networks of support that we're tapped into through We the World, Ubiquity University, and all the rest. So the idea is that we are telling a story. We want to make it so simple a child can understand it. And so we have 3 children, ages 9, 11, and 13, who later today will be presenting a part of their story, a fictional story. And this is going to be developed as a musical play that we will present in April for Earth Day. And we have some wonderful people in our local community who are helping to develop that with the Star Center Theater and several of our people in the schools. So it's really exciting. The other part of that Helen was talking about is the interfaith climate group. So again, going back to this idea that we've all been telling the story of a time when we would be able to live together in peace with other people, with other life, with the planet. And so we have invited people of faith and goodwill to come together, bring their traditions, bring their songs, bring their stories, and let's work together to tell a new story for the human family. And so, yeah, that's about what we're doing.
Wow, it's pretty amazing. And each of the 3 of you are so passionate about what you're doing. It's just such a pleasure to hear you, Helen. Your enthusiasm and passion and lifelong commitment is just amazing. Listening to what you were saying, and of course, Shannon. I have this feeling, Shannon, that you're going to show up on each of these 11 days because interdependence is in your blood. And I mean, do you want to say anything about that, Shannon? Because I just have this feeling, and you've been also, in our meetings when we have the coordinators of each of the campaigns, and we know how they're all connected, but you really want to make sure that all those interconnections between economic justice and women and human rights and environment and everything is all interconnected. And of course, that idea of conscious interdependence, right?
Right. Yeah, thanks, Rick. And yeah, I think when I think about that, all of these things are so interconnected. We cannot talk about the big mama, Mother Earth, and what's being done and not connect it to economic justice. We cannot not connect it to human rights, right? I think about, I was just talking earlier about the women that are at the, on the front lines of, protecting the water sources. And, and knowing that it's not just the water sources, that those extraction camps are taking women and children. I mean, this is a reality, right? That there's that very important piece of that is, part of how we treat the earth is how we will treat each other. So I can't not connect it. And I think it's important because sometimes we don't connect the dots and we think that these things are in somehow compartmentalized or isolated, and they're not. And so for me, one of the reasons that I think are one of the most important things I think I can do is show up. I don't have the answers, but I absolutely believe that we do. And I am counting on the fact that we do. And in that collective wisdom, I think is our ability, our pathway to get to that peace on earth for all of creation. So yes, I'm passionate. I'll probably show up. I'll try not to be too much of a bug. If I'm not on, I'll be in the room watching.
That's great. And for me, it's like it's all about the butterfly effect. A butterfly flaps its wings in the Amazon, and that is actually somehow connected to a typhoon, across the world. And I'm very aware of that. And I mean, somebody on a panel yesterday was talking about just doing simple things in your life to contribute to society, like holding a door open for someone, or taking the time to greet somebody that you don't know, or smile at somebody you don't know. And I'm very aware that small actions like that can have a ripple effect in that same way that we talk about the butterfly effect. So might as well, have a positive influence. Right?
Yeah. I think even that, that whole, I can't remember how it went, but it was, tell one, teach one, bring one, that we each could do that. These small little things are really huge and have a huge impact. And, this morning, this great thing happened to me. It's a great thing. I got up this morning, the electricity was off. The cell phones, of course, were not working. And I had no computer, and it was wonderful. So no electricity, no phones, no computer. And what a wonderful gift. I'm like, thank you. So of course, what else do you notice? And what a simple thing, in our ceremonies, we have what we call a sunrise ceremony. And it's a way of greeting the day. And we take care of what we care about. And I absolutely can tell you that if you go put your feet on the earth and greet the day, you will begin to care about that. And you will begin to notice things that maybe you didn't notice before. And all of that, Rick, is that increased consciousness, and once you're in relationship, be it with the tree, the earth, each other, things change. They're never the same. You're in a sacred, when we bring in somebody to what we call the sacred circle, you know, they're changed. It just happens. Years ago, I was working in grandmother country in Canada. I have dual citizenship in Canada and the US, well, tri-citizenship in the Ojibwe Nation. And we were working with Health Canada, and there was a program that we had that all the Indigenous people were speaking to the political territorial organizations were trying to have something supported, our healing centers supported. And Health Canada was like, no, that's not what these funds are for. No, these are supposed to concentrate on children, 0 to 3. And we were saying, but if you don't improve the conditions of the families that have the children to 0 to 3, how exactly are you going to help the children 0 to 3? And that's what these healing centers were about. And it wasn't until we actually brought some folks from Health Canada into ceremony with us and into our communities to experience what we were experiencing, could they make the shift. And so when I think about the environment and the shift that we need to make in our thinking that has been affected by all kinds of viruses, then we have to know that we have to first establish relationship. And that's what, the climate collaboratory allows people to do. The power of telling your climate story that Sue has been encouraging makes people stop and think. And when they stop and think, they increase that consciousness and go, oh yeah, I am related some way. So I have a story. So thank you, Sue, for all the consistent work you do in allowing a platform for those stories to come forth, right? And Rick for holding the space to get all this good stuff together. And that's the advantage of kind of, some people talk about it like getting on the balcony so you can see, or getting in space, as Sue said, so you can look down at this beautiful globe of the earth and say, maybe I'll change my perspective.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you.
Sure.
Thanks for listening.
And before we finish up, Helen, would you like to say a few more sort of closing words? We've heard a lot from Sue and Shannon.
I have nothing to add to them other than that this whole process, what I appreciate is that it's an ongoing conversation and it allows each of us to bring more people to the room.
Exactly. Thank you for your dedication and commitment for all these years, Helen.
And for being a good friend.
Oh, Sue, yes. I think we're all of a similar generation. And,
It's wonderful to find people who are walking on this same path together.
well, especially in the same city so that we can
And
do
in
it
the same
together.
city, yes, so that we
Okay.
can do in the local and draw on this global network of support. So I just wanted to close with the idea that because we are living in a climate emergency, that each of us on this planet, approaching now 8 billion people, each of us has a climate story to tell. And so what we're doing in the Climate Collaboratory is helping people to understand and be able to tell their own climate story and to draw out of other people what their climate stories are, so that we can put it all together as the climate story of our human family, that we want to be living right now, or we are, one way or another, we're living the story that future generations will tell their children and grandchildren. And so we want to make it a good story.
Definitely. And we have a couple other events today. Do you want to just mention what they are that you are co-hosting, I think, with me on both of these?
Yeah,
The one that's coming up pretty soon, right after, like an hour
Yes.
from now.
right, at 1 o'clock Eastern, Rick and I will be greeting 4 women who are helping to create a climate. We're talking about educating for a climate of peace. And so we're starting with the human heart and working all the way out to the planet itself, that we have a new climate that we are growing here. And then at 6 o'clock Eastern, we have the 3 children that I mentioned. That's Adrian, Rebecca, and Victoria Alvarez, who are going to be helping with the reading of Act 2 of what will be our musical play in April for Earth Day. And it's really fun to work with these children and develop the story, the games, the songs that are helping to provide we want something that appeals to every generation, the children, youth, the adults, and the elders, as part of this community-wide climate conversation to action program that is the Climate Collaboratory.
Yep, and it's a special edition of the Welcome to We show. So I just want to say, in that regard, regarding the idea of we, that I think we accomplished what we always set out to do on all of our events, which is to inspire, inform, and involve you and everyone in this work of creating a world that works for all. So it's 3 I's: inspire, inform, and involve, 3 I's that make a we. So we can go from a me society to a we society. And of course, to find out more and connect with us on all of these things, please go to we.net. And to close us out, Jim, would you like to say a few words? So we'll have Jim bookends for today's session.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Sue and Helen and Shannon. This has been a very important contribution to our 11 days of global unity. The whole notion of sharing climate stories at this extraordinary moment of duress is such a powerful thing, because people live through their stories. So I just wanted to thank you, Sue, for everything that you're doing and your colleagues in that regard. And to say, that the one thing that I think we all need to bear in mind as we move into this climate emergency is the imperative to come together in a higher strategic formation. So we're not just working individually, but we're working collaboratively to focus on regenerating our ecosystem as best we can, whatever the initial starting point for any and all of us. We need to really come together with a much more singularity, I would say, of purpose, so that we can have a united front as we deal with this code red situation. So we hope that the climate collaboratory will find its place and feel welcome in the Global Regeneration Corps, which again is not an organization, it's just a global call to action in the face of code red, because I have a feeling that you have a very important role to play as people increasingly are having climate stories to tell wherever they are in the world. So thank you for that. And then tomorrow, we're going to be dealing with the issue of economic justice that emanates out of the environment. It emanates out of the growing disparities. So that'll be the theme tomorrow. on our fourth day of the 11 days. So again, thank you, Rick, and all of you that participated today. It's been a very powerful session. And then everyone who would like to, as we close the session now, there will be another one at the top of the hour, but you're welcome to our after session chat that Sanley Pokris and others convene each day on Humanity Rising. You'll see the link in the chat box, but everybody's welcome to join that as well. Although I know this is a very busy time. I think Rick's got 4 events today alone. So we want to be mindful of people's bandwidth capacity at the same time. But wonderful work, everyone. Thank you so much. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.